Chapter 2392 Civil War 1. With a thought, the giant gate slowly opened, and countless dark arms, claws, and tentacle-like shadows surged out, as if to drag the entire battlefield into the abyss. After all the deaths, the undead who entered the Shadowlands, the souls of the most devout assassins of the assassins, did not choose to return to the ether, but instead remained by Saladin's side, fighting for him. When it comes to faith, the assassins are no less than the Holy See. They are even more fanatical when it comes to giving their lives for their beliefs. The raging tide of shadows is sweeping toward Leibniz. This is the Legion of the Dead that Saladin summoned directly using the Shadow Realm. They are the embodiment of the will of Shadow, beings that devour all light. Leibniz did not back down. She held the Book of Revelation tightly in her hands, tears streaming down her face, but her eyes were filled with determination. She murmured, "The Lord says, those who sow in tears will reap with joy. If mercy is my blade, then these tears will bring you to your end." An apocalypse suddenly erupted, and a gray-white plague mist surged wildly. This time, it was no longer a simple erosion, but rather the direct condensation of countless translucent, mournful phantoms. They were either fallen warriors or suffering believers, each carrying endless sorrow, yet transformed into an indomitable will in the holy light. The Legion of the Dead and the phantoms of mourning clashed fiercely on the battlefield. Shadows and plagues are intertwined and entangled, with energy storms coming one after another. Countless screams and sobs mingled together, as if the whole world was mourning their resistance. Saladin stood at the center of the raging shadow tide, like the king of darkness, raising his shadow blade and slashing wildly. Dissipate. Compassion is nothing but a fragile illusion before darkness. Leibniz stood bathed in divine light, the light of revelation highlighting her unwavering resolve. Her voice was compassionate, yet undeniable.
"No, Saladin.
Your shadow may swallow the light, but it cannot erase faith. For faith does not belong to the shadows."
Boom.
The forces of both sides collided once again at their most extreme levels. The world changed color completely. Meanwhile, Merlin's battle against the Sun and Moon Angels was equally intense. Middelin and Serial joined forces, their combined radiance creating an incredibly intense torrent of energy. This combined attack technique, Dance of the Sun and Moon, seemed to transform into a second sun and moon in their hands, illuminating the earth. Merlin, however, still wore a faint smile. His robes fluttered wildly, runes swirled in his eyes, and the radiance around him twisted and contorted. He once again used the divine deprivation technique, stealing the power of both Middelin and Serial. In an instant, his entire body was covered in a double radiance of gold and silver, like a god who controlled the heavens and the earth. "Your power has ultimately fallen into my hands." Merlin chuckled softly, clasped his hands together, and then suddenly opened them outwards. The combined brilliance of the sun and moon erupted in his palm, transforming into a massive energy wheel that directly met the attack head-on. Boom! A deafening roar echoed through the heavens and earth once again. Merlin's sun and moon discs collided violently with the combined attack of the angels. The clash of light against light robbed the world of its color, leaving only a blinding white. Middelin finally lost his composure and roared angrily, "Impossible! Why are you so arbitrarily manipulating our own power?" Serial frowned and said in a low voice, "This is his theocratic deprivation. He can seize the abilities of others for himself. Middelin, if we don't decide the victor soon, the situation will be extremely unfavorable for us." There was one more thing Serial didn't say. That is, as a senior of Trinity College, Merlin has always been a genius they looked up to. In the realm of superpowers, he can master almost any superpower he has learned in the shortest amount of time. Otherwise, how could he have developed such a freakish ability? A most terrifying thought surfaced in his mind. It's quite possible that Merlin, after copying their abilities, will use them even better than their original owners. Both of them gritted their teeth, and their brilliance surged once again. Their dual radiance gradually merged, no longer just two disks, but coalesced into a perfect sun and moon in one disk. It contains both the scorching heat of the sun and the chill of the moon, as if it were the supreme balance of heaven and earth. A huge yin-yang symbol formed by gold and silver. Sun and moon in harmony, the ultimate dance. The two roared simultaneously. The combined attack, carrying terrifying energy, swept down, almost annihilating Merlin completely. Merlin laughed loudly, as if this was exactly what he had expected. He raised his hands high, and the runes flowed wildly, instantly replicating the ultimate attack. Theocracy is stripped away, the sun and moon unite. Two equally terrifying energy disks collided violently in midair. The world seemed to be engulfed in destruction. In that instant, the ground completely cracked, rocks flew everywhere, and a huge rift was torn open in the sky. All the spectators were terrified, as if their world might collapse at any moment. The aftershocks swept across the battlefield, even affecting the battlefield between Saladin and Leibniz. Saladin was shaken and staggered, while Leibniz's apocalyptic brilliance was pushed to its limit. The entire battlefield has now become an arena for the gods. After a long time, the battlefield seemed to have returned to calm. Broken corpses were left on the ground, and weapons broken in two were stuck in the dark soil, seemingly recording the end of a fierce battle. Father Orion stumbled out of the storm of shadows, his holy silver spear broken in half, the muzzle still emitting residual smoke. These damned heretics. I'll destroy the pupil organization's lair sooner or later and burn them at the stake. Father Orion gritted his teeth. The battle that had just taken place was far too brutal. Facing two powerful alien legions simultaneously was indeed too much for them. If the Knights of the Round Table and the Shadow Fiend Legion hadn't been unwilling to fight them to the death, they would all be struggling to leave Dark Sun Forest today. Father Orion's chest heaved violently, his armor shattered, and his clothes were soaked with blood. His breathing was low and heavy, each breath accompanied by a tearing pain. Even the holy light emanating from his entire body had dimmed considerably, and the pure white radiance in his eyes flickered, as if it might be extinguished at any moment. Why were they able to discover our operation? The Vatican's secrets could not possibly be leaked. Beside him, Sister Leibniz was also extremely weak. She was still clutching the copy of Apocalypse tightly in her hands, tears still streaming down her face, but her complexion was pale, as if she might collapse at any moment. A sacred aura emanated from her, like a candle flickering in the wind and rain. Father Orion gasped for breath and said in a deep voice, "Perhaps there are people with special abilities among them. Damn it, that's why I hate this world full of superhumans." Chapter 2393 Civil War 2. The laws of causality and the time system can both potentially see into the future, leaving their secrets nowhere to hide. Sister Leibniz frowned. Impossible. They cannot understand our mission through causality. They carry the apocalypse within them. This is their greatest protection. The Book of Revelation itself contains the immense power of the believer's thoughts. Those with abilities based on causality or time, who wish to foresee their future, will be hindered by this powerful force of thought. That's even stranger. Father Orlean didn't understand either, but now that it had happened, they had no choice but to continue down this path. Fortunately, after they fought desperately and left the Dark Sun Forest, King Arthur and his men did not pursue them. It seems they've headed to the center of the Dark Sun Forest after all. Sister Leibniz breathed a sigh of relief. She looked back and saw several corpses lying on the ground. They were figures she once knew. It was these Templar knights who risked their lives to cover the rear, allowing them to break through and escape. They bore deep wounds, and even in their dying moments, they held high their swords and shields, symbols of their faith, using their last strength to protect Orion and Leibniz. Blood splattered, staining the land of the Dark Sun Forest red. The echoes of the aftershocks still reverberated through the woods. The interplay of shadows and light had not yet completely subsided, but they were no longer strong enough to fight. "May you find eternity in the kingdom of heaven." Sister Leibniz prayed for them with tears in her eyes. Orion gritted his teeth, bracing himself, and gripped the broken remains of the holy silver spear sword tightly with his left hand. His body was covered in blood, but his eyes burned with obsession. He coughed up a mouthful of blood and said in a low voice, "There's no time for sadness, sister. We must leave as soon as possible. I fear things might change if we delay. For the sake of the Junjing sect's millennia-old aspiration, we must complete the mission, even if it costs us our last drop of blood." Leibniz used her last strength to prop herself up, a resolute glint in her tear-filled eyes, her voice weak yet firm. "Yes, even if it means sacrificing everything, we must reach the abyss of darkness. Because that is the origin, and only there can we obtain the true answers." Her voice was like a low murmur, carrying a resolute determination that seemed to burn life out completely. The copy of Apocalypse still emitted a faint holy glow in her arms, as if responding to her beliefs. Orion nodded in a deep voice, a mad obsession flashing in his eyes. He no longer looked at the bloodstains and wounds on his body, no longer cared whether his life was about to end. At this moment, his only thought was the mission entrusted to him by the Pope. He had to complete it. We must reclaim the power buried in the abyss. Several knights stumbled and staggered, leading them gradually away from the battlefield. In the dark sun forest, Saladin's shadow domain gradually receded, and darkness swallowed the fallen corpses, as if turning this forest into a land of death. After the great battle, a large number of shadow fiends were purified, which was also a considerable loss for him. At the edge of the dark sun forest, as the flames of war gradually subsided, the Knights of the Round Table and Saladin's Shadow Fiend Legion stood silently on a ruin shrouded in black mist. The wind howled, whipping up tattered flags and blood-stained dust, and the air was still thick with the stench of blood. King Arthur and Saladin looked into the distance. Several figures were struggling to move away. Father Orion and Sister Leibniz, heavily injured and exhausted, disappeared into the black mist under the cover of several Templar knights. They ran away. Saladin spoke coldly. "I never imagined that these guys would risk their lives just to leave the dark sun forest." King Arthur shrugged, and even managed a laugh as he said, "These guys are all crazy." He glanced at Saladin and thought to himself, "Just like you bunch of lunatics." Lancelot gripped his weapon tightly, gazing at the distant figure with a complex expression. They did not pursue, and despite their suspicions and hostility, not one of them raised their sword. "Aren't we going to chase those guys? They haven't gone far yet. If we keep fighting, we'll definitely win." Lancelot said, somewhat unconvinced. "There's no need to pursue." King Arthur shook his head, his eyes deep. "This is no longer our primary concern right now." The sound of the wind seemed even more desolate in the silence. The soldiers of the two legions remained silent, covered in blood, many with injuries, yet still standing tall. "A conspiracy by the Vatican." Saladin's voice gradually lowered, his eyes turning cold. "Whatever they want is beyond our comprehension. Father Orion and Sister Leibniz, they have been forced to this point." Upon hearing this, King Arthur lowered his eyelids, a slight change appearing on his face. Zhang Yi simply told them that the Vatican had orchestrated a massive conspiracy and that they must pay close attention to the movements of this group. Although it is still unclear what the Vatican is specifically planning to do, it is certainly contrary to the objectives of the Human Alliance's current operation. Unexpectedly, Zhang Yi was right. The lingering smell of blood in the air filled King Arthur with an overwhelming sense of unease. His eyes were cold as he said indifferently, "They say it's on the Pope's orders, but in reality, the Vatican has never truly cared about us humans." "That's right." Saladin nodded, his gaze deep and unfathomable. "They keep saying it's for the holy light and order, but true order is often just an empty shell in their mouths. What they pursue is power, control, and authority that transcends this world." King Arthur sighed helplessly. Even at this point, the Vatican is still causing trouble. Do they really want to see the heavens collapse, moon fragments fall to Earth, and cause a mass extinction of life on the entire surface world? What on earth are they up to? Black mist swirled among them, obscuring the blood-red ground.
He remembered that name.
Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi's real name is no secret, but King Arthur rarely called Zhang Yi by his name. How much does that guy actually know? Damn it, he's holding back when he asks us to do his bidding. Saladin smiled and said, "At least we can be sure that he has no ill intentions towards us." After all. He looked at King Arthur, and the two exchanged a helpless smile. He is already a member of our pupil organization.
Yes.
After returning from the Eye of the Devil, Zhang Yi chose to join the pupil organization. It's less about joining and more about joining forces. The pupil organization is a loose alliance with a shared desire to survive in the apocalypse. Zhang Yi agreed to join the pupil organization and officially became one of their 4 Knights of Dawn, the Night of Deception. Chapter 2394 Civil War 3. However, Zhang Yi's attitude was also very clear. He would only act for his own benefit. He would quit at any time if the things the pupil organization offered him were less than his worth. Of course, given Zhang Yi's current strength, the pupil organization readily agreed to his conditions. The two men's voices weren't loud, but all the surviving soldiers heard them clearly. Their gazes turned in unison to the depths of the dark forest, a place of endless gloom and unknowns, but also a name that stirred a faint hope within them.
Zhang Yi.
King Arthur spoke slowly. He understands the situation better than any of us and sees it more clearly than anyone else. He sees the papacy and even the secrets of this forest more deeply than we do. So, what should we do? Saladin's voice was deep, yet carried a rare solemnity. The air quieted down, with only the black fog churning. King Arthur looked up, a hint of amusement in his eyes, and shrugged. Is there any need to ask? Didn't he already leave us a signal? We'll go deep into the dark sun forest and find him. This time, we must make that guy tell us the truth. Saladin glanced at him and then nodded slightly. He is now our greatest hope for breaking the deadlock, Saladin said, his eyes filled with respect as he mentioned Zhang. Although he doesn't seem very serious on a regular basis, he is very reliable when it comes to getting things done. Good. King Arthur's voice was firm and resolute. The current situation is beyond our ability to handle alone. Only he may be able to provide some direction. They won't discuss Zhang Yi's character, but they have to admit that he's prudent and cautious. In this dangerous dark sun forest, following Zhang Yi is still the most promising option. The soldiers' eyes gradually converged, all landing on the two of them. Although they were somewhat exhausted after the great battle, they seemed to have gained a new strength in their hearts at this moment, a kind of unwavering belief stemming from trust. Deep in the distant forest, black mist billowed, as if waiting for them to step inside. The two exchanged a glance, a resolute look flashing in each other's eyes. Let's go. King Arthur spoke. It's time to reunite with Lord Chaos. Saladin nodded as well. Their voices weren't loud, but they carried enough power to make all the warriors stand up straight again. The Knights of the Round Table and the Shadow Fiend Legion slowly embarked on a new path. The blood and fire have not yet dissipated, and the darkness ahead is even deeper and more treacherous. But in their hearts, a light named Zhang Yi is illuminating a path forward in the depths of darkness. Deep within the dark sun forest, Zhang Yi and his group were still slowly making their way forward. At this moment, the only thing they can rely on to find the location of the meteor shower is Brian's keen sense of smell. The large black nose twitched vigorously, and the scent collected by the scent collector entered the helmet, where it was then identified by its nose. From the complex scents, they separated the remnants of the meteorite and mortal bones from the air to determine the direction they had departed. This is a technical job. However, with a dog sniffing left and right in front and a group of people following cautiously behind, the whole procession looked rather comical. Fatty Sue thought to himself, luckily, everyone is wearing combat uniforms at this time. Otherwise, if someone had eaten garlic or accidentally farted, it could have caused a major disaster. Call. Brian took a deep breath, his nostrils flaring slightly. He held the two large paws in his arms, his voice carrying an air of feigned profundity. 300 meters ahead, there's the lingering scent of burning bones and traces of energy left by the meteor. Its tail swayed gently, but there was no sign of ease, and its large eyes revealed a deep sense of caution, because it also knows that this forest will not easily allow prey to be found. Zhang Yi raised his eyes and stared at the thick, almost solidified black mist in front of him. The fog rolled slowly as if it were alive, engulfing everything in sight. "All right, let's continue in this direction." His voice was calm and even, yet it carried a reassuring firmness. The large force quickly adjusted its formation, remained vigilant, and slowly advanced. Suddenly, Brian, the leader, twitched his ears, bared his teeth, and growled in a low voice, "Watch out. Something's approaching." Before the words were finished, the black mist ahead suddenly rippled, and several tall, dark figures emerged from the fog. Everyone instinctively gripped their weapons, their nerves instantly on edge. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes, his right hand hanging at his side. Within this range, all he needs to do to launch an attack is to calculate the spatial coordinates in his brain, and then a single-dimensional string dissociation can destroy almost all matter. But as the figures gradually became clearer, everyone could see what the newcomers looked like. Those are people from the Norse pantheon. Within the Colombian contingent, someone whispered, a hint of excitement in their voice. Having reunited with their lost allies, the team is able to grow stronger, making it much easier for them to complete their mission. Sure enough, the leader was none other than Odin, clad in silver armor. His single eye was like fire, his beard was thick, and his aura was as imposing as a mountain. Behind him, Loki, Hela, and dozens of elite warriors from the Norse court followed closely, each one imposing and majestic. However, for some reason, those who emerged from the dark fog seemed to have a more gloomy air about them. However, no one thought about it too much. After all, who could be in a good mood in this godforsaken place? Chaos and Adam. Benjamin Morgan's pseudonym was Adam, named after the legendary economist Adam Smith. Odin walked over with a loud, cheerful voice and a hearty laugh. "We finally found you here. This godforsaken place is a maze. Luckily, we saw your signal and rushed here. Damn it. Thank goodness we're going the right way. I almost thought we were going to get lost here." Zhang Yi stopped and stared at him quietly. Odin's laughter drew closer as he strode over, spreading his arms as if to embrace Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi's gaze remained unchanged, as calm as a still lake. He had no recollection of ever being so close to Odin that they could embrace each other. Yang Xinshin and Brian also seemed to have noticed something was wrong. A dog's intuition is always more acute than a human's. It stared at the Norse pantheon before it with a puzzled look in its eyes. Odin and his men strode over, and were less than 20 meters away from them. Zhang Yi quietly raised his hand, slightly blocking his companion's path. "You didn't come here just to say hello, did you?" Zhang Yi spoke calmly, staring at Odin as he asked. "Dear viewers, thanks for staying with me. We'll try to get you more updates. Please like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. Love you all."